Meet John Doe, a quiet, friendly type who likes to keep his yard trim and tidy. He's a perfect neighbor in every way but one. John Doe kills women, a lot of women.
The bodies are piling up. People began wondering what's going on here. Who are these women? Who's killing them?
17 women dead, and police can't find him. He's a serial killer with the ultimate weapon. He's a chameleon.
Serial killers' trademark is their ability to manipulate those around them into believing that they're nothing more than just a regular human being.
It was like a puzzle, and I wanted to solve it.
A dark, twisted puzzle spawned from the mind of a killer that only forensic science can stop. Spokane, Washington. By day, it's a safe place to raise a family. But when night falls, a darker underbelly emerges. In the past 3 years, 6 women have been found dead, shot and dumped in the countryside. Their bodies are so decomposed, police find little evidence, and identifying them takes months. When investigators finally do put names to the victims, they discover they have one thing in common. They are ladies of the night.
It was extremely unusual to have dead prostitutes in the city of Spokane within a short period of time. We had some type of a serial murder situation going on here. There was somebody preying on that segment of our society here in Spokane.
Then the streets grow quiet, and investigators pray the killing is over. August 26, 1997. A rider on the outskirts of Spokane sees what he thinks is a dead deer.
That is no animal.
Detectives Rick Grabenstein and Fred Rooch respond to the crime scene. Is this woman the latest victim of the serial killer? The location of the body strikes a chord with investigators.
It was in a rural area, wheat fields and trees.
Grabenstein and Rooch know this countryside well.
Every single body that was found in this county, regardless of the reason, we responded to it.
Previous crime scenes have yielded little evidence. This victim's wounds are fresh, potentially offering clues about the killer. A small hole in the skull points to the cause of death.
Yeah, I've got a bullet hole in the back there.
She had apparently been the victim of a gunshot wound to the head, shot with a small caliber handgun.
But if they're right, the crime scene doesn't match the crime.
Every time you have a head wound, you have a great deal of bleeding, particularly with the gunshot wounds. That blood should be there at the scene.
When there's a lack of blood at an immediate location, that generally indicates that the killing did not occur there, and this is what's commonly referred to as a dump site.
Every one of the victims had been transported by a motor vehicle to their body found sites. We know we have a car somewhere, more than likely it has a great deal of evidence in it.
And the method of transport isn't the only similarity to the previous crimes.
The fact that they were in the rural areas, all female, in different conditions of disrobing, and the fact that they are all having been shot, it did lead you to at least suspect strongly that there was some relationship there.
If the serial killer is back, investigators need hard evidence to confirm their suspicion. But first, they have to ID the victim. Through dental records, they learn her name is Jenifer Joseph, a local prostitute. At the autopsy, the coroner looks for the serial killer's signature MO.
There were generally at least 2 gunshot wounds to the head region, very closely situated. And this is sometimes referred to in police and military circles as double tapping. In other words, the habit of firing, if you're going to fire the gun, fire it twice.
But Jenifer Joseph's body tells a different story.
In this particular autopsy, there were some distinctly different findings. She had gunshot wounds elsewhere. That included the left shoulder, and there was also a gunshot wound to the chest region, the anterior chest region. This strongly suggests that this lady either resisted or may have potentially almost got away.
Bullet fragments indicate the killer used a .22 pistol, a discovery which gives them pause for thought. Investigators know the previous victims were shot with the larger .25 caliber weapon. Now they must ask themselves, is the killer changing his MO? Or worse, could this be the work of a copycat killer? To link Jenifer's murder to the others, they'll need more than circumstantial evidence. The coroner searches her body for traces of the killer's DNA.
What we're looking for primarily is seminal fluid. That gives us the opportunity, if we can recover it, for DNA identification of a perpetrator, or at least somebody who's had intercourse in a brief interval prior to the death.
In previous cases, the massive deterioration of the bodies made DNA retrieval almost impossible.
In many cases, putrefaction was so bad that you weren't even sure that you could tell where you were sampling.
Despite these challenges, the coroner has managed to get 2 matching DNA samples from previous victims. Now he searches for male DNA in Jenifer Joseph's body. True to form, the coroner gets his sample, and with it, the answer investigators have been waiting for.
It became very apparent to us that this was the DNA of our killer.
Despite the different MO used in the Jenifer Joseph killing, the DNA evidence leaves no doubt that after a year of silence, the serial killer is back on the prowl. If investigators want to catch their killer, they have to head down to his watering hole. And in Spokane, that means East Sprague Avenue, better known as the Track. They spread a wide net, attempting to identify regular customers.
We briefed the uniform division to try to make as much note as possible of everybody that was utilizing the prostitutes out there.
What's going on?
But winning the confidence of these women presents police with a challenge.
The relationship between police and prostitutes is typically real adversarial. We're on opposite sides of the law.
The prostitutes stonewall the police at every turn.
They're reluctant to reporting this to the police, and because they don't trust the police.
The killer chooses his victims wisely. He stalks the Track, knowing full well that a missing prostitute attracts little police attention.
There were people at higher levels controlling purse strings, that sort of thing, that did make some off-the-cuff comments about spending that much time investigating the death of a prostitute.
But the attitudes of local citizens presents an even greater obstacle.
Because only prostitutes were showing up dead, there was really, unfortunately, not a lot of attention paid to this, and this community woke up very slowly to what was going on. If these had been school teachers or nurses ending up dead and tossed into these fields and along the roadsides, something would have been done much quicker.
You know, the public's perception of the victims out there, that's a very little concern to me as a detective. I'm the guy at the bottom. My job is to catch who's killing them.
That job's about to get a whole lot harder. In a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, the killer continues to elude police. Over the next few months, right under their noses, he strikes again, and again, and again.
This guy is not going to quit killing people.
With every murder, the Spokane serial killer is cleaning up his act. In Spokane, Washington, investigators are chasing an elusive serial killer. They have his DNA, but no viable suspect to match it with. And with his latest victim, he's getting better at covering his tracks.
I noticed that placed over her head was a plastic shopping bag with a smiley face imprinted on it. And at that time, myself and the other detectives present discussed whether this was some kind of a sick joke, for lack of a better term.
The latest victim is 26-year-old Darla Sue Scott. Investigators question the purpose of the plastic bag.
These are obviously not playing any role in the death. And the reason for that is there are no holes in the bags, and there are gunshot wounds to the head underneath the bag. The only explanation that seems reasonable for this is that a person is probably transporting the body and needs to stop the shedding of blood from the wounds.
With this new trick under his belt, the killer won't be leaving any more evidence behind in his car. He's cleaning up his act.
If I can use the term learning in a perverse sense, that's what's going on. He's learning from each of his victims as he moves along through the course of these murders.
With the death toll rising, women working the streets, like Christine Smith, know that every trick is a high-stakes gamble.
How you doing, honey?
It's like playing Russian roulette, really. Everybody was in fear. I mean, it wasn't just, I don't think it was just the prostitutes. I mean, everyone was concerned.
Although the track is a hunting ground, many prostitutes stay for one simple reason: drugs.
Every penny I made went to crack. Every single penny. I would work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, go, and it was just to buy crack.
In the women that work the track, the killer knows he's got a desperate and captive supply of victims. For Christine Smith and the others, leaving town isn't an option.
I mean, you gotta feed the gorilla on your back, no matter what.
Pressuring the prostitutes for information isn't working, so investigators adopt a new strategy. They send in officers with special instructions: build trust with the women.
We had detectives assigned just for that purpose, whose marching orders were basically to overlook any of the misdemeanor or low-level criminal activity they may be involved in, befriend them, become their friend, become their trusted somebody, so that they'll call you.
Through sheer persistence, they finally succeed in getting one of the women to open up. She reveals a key piece of information about the night Jenifer Joseph disappeared.
Last time I saw her, she was getting into a white Corvette.
A white Corvette? Did she get a plate? Is he a regular?
No.
We had a good identification that Jenifer Joseph had been seen in a white Corvette, the last time that we could verify that she was seen alive.
It's the first big break in the case. But locating the car is not as easy as it might seem.
We had about 4,000 Corvette registrations from eastern Washington and another 900 from northern Idaho.
Investigators are also concerned that the car's color might have been misreported.
Some people's idea of what white is another person's silver or another person's light blue, so you're worried about excluding cars that might be the killer's car. So the list is several thousand Corvettes long.
All right, I got the pictures of the vets.
In an effort to focus the list, they re-examine their evidence looking for any connection to the car. Forensic technician Kevin Jenkins recovers a red fiber from Jenifer Joseph's shoe.
The characteristics that I look at to determine if something is a carpet fiber is generally the size. Carpet fibers are generally larger than those used for clothing or upholstery.
Based on the lifestyle of the victim, he concludes that those fibers are not from just any carpet.
The fibers were likely from a automotive source, just by the nature of the victims being prostitutes and in and out of cars on a regular basis.
Now investigators have a specific tool to pare down the 4,900 Corvettes on their list. They meet with Corvette owners. They check all used car lots and Corvette clubs. collecting carpet samples from every Corvette they find with a red interior.
Carpet samples from several vehicles were sent to the laboratory for analysis to compare against the carpet fibers that were found on Jenifer Joseph.
But there is no match. Checking almost 5,000 vehicles is going to take time. Time the killer can use to hunt his next victim. Investigators finally know the make of the Spokane serial killer's car, and even the color of its carpet. But they are no closer to determining his identity. They turn to the one piece of evidence they have that might bear the mark of their killer.
We were hoping to potentially get a print off of those bags, if at all possible.
Investigators turn to a radical new approach in fingerprint technology.
I first became aware of it one night at home watching a television show about forensic work.
The new cutting-edge technology is called vacuum metal deposition. It's the last chance they have to get the killer's fingerprints.
This machine is a large metal tank from which they extract all the air and turn it into virtually a perfect vacuum.
The device works by heating zinc and gold within the tank until they vaporize. The metals coat everything except contaminants.
The fingerprints show up because that is a contaminant, and any contaminant disrupts the deposition of the metal onto the article.
Having now retrieved 4 smiley face bags from the killer's latest victims, police are confident they'll find something. But the first bag reveals nothing. Disappointed, they return to the drawing board. 3 bags from 3 victims are painstakingly run through the system, but still no sign of their killer. On their last try, they finally catch a break and manage to pull a print. It's not the fingerprint they'd been hoping for. It's a palm print, and that poses problems for investigators.
The palm print has to be compared 1-to-1 with a suspect palm print by a human examiner.
The trouble is, investigators are a long way from finding a suspect.
I likened the whole investigation to a roller coaster. We would be up one moment, believing we were on the trail of our killer, only to find that the lab would prove us wrong.
With every blind alley they go down, the killer gets another chance to strike. And 2 weeks after his last murder, he decides to double his efforts.
Both of us?
The latest victims are Laura Wasson and Sean McClenahan. Again, it's the same MO. The victims are prostitutes found in an isolated rural setting. Both have been shot in the head. Both are tagged with the killer's infamous calling card. But this time, one of the bodies yields a clue. A strange mark behind her left ear.
When a contact gunshot wound occurs, there's a good chance the skin is blown back against the end of the barrel, and that can leave an imprint.
Please! Please!
Based on ballistics, police know the killer used a .22 caliber pistol. Now forensic technician Ed Robinson hopes to use the gunshot mark to zone in on the specific make and model of the murder weapon.
I was provided with photographs of one of the shooting victims which depicted damage to the skin near the ear of the head. Looking at the photograph, I was fairly sure, based on my original list of 3 firearms, that I was going to be able to narrow it down to 1 firearm. The process that I used was to put a thin layer of clay on a styrofoam mannequin head and then make impressions with various portions of the firearms that I had previously listed. The process for the photography was just to make everything 1-to-1 so that all of the images were the same size.
After several attempts, he gets a perfect match.
I narrowed the list to Raven pistols.
Police get a list of Raven owners. They compare it to lists of Corvette owners and sex offenders.
It was felt if we could compare all those lists together and sift it and see what shook out the bottom, whose name appeared the most times in all those lists, that was probably our suspect.
13 women dead, and police still don't have a suspect. As the death toll rises, so does the fear in the community.
The pressure was really mounting, and so the public's awareness was really mounting. Even though these women were viewed by many as, quote, just prostitutes, it still was becoming an issue of significant community concern.
I think that the public was also afraid that it was going to stem into, like, not just out on Sprague with the prostitutes, that possibly he'd start killing off other just quote-unquote normal people too.
Police authorities respond to the public pressure.
We formed a task force made up of detectives from the city police department, the sheriff's department, the Washington State Patrol. We had participation from the FBI as well as the Washington State Attorney General's office.
The heightened attention triggers an overwhelming public response.
Once the task force was formed, a hotline was set up, and a lot of people were calling in their neighbors, their friends, their ex-boyfriends, saying, I think you ought to take a look at this guy. And so, in quick order, the task force had a long list of people they needed to look at.
Despite the outpouring of tips, no credible suspects are put forward, suggesting to police the killer is a master at blending in.
Serial killers' trademark is their ability to manipulate those around them into believing that they're nothing more than just a regular human being.
They don't stand out for any particular reason. They don't look like Frankenstein or anything.
The man who is killing prostitutes in cold blood could even be a family man, someone his friends and neighbors would never suspect, someone who's not likely to ever come to the attention of police, someone with an ironclad cover. With the murder count now at 13, law enforcement agencies across the region join together to catch the elusive Spokane serial killer. Investigators believe they are chasing someone with an ironclad cover, a killer with the ability to hide in plain sight. But with no viable suspects, police follow up on the only concrete lead they have, the killer's brand of weapon. They contact Raven gun owners in the area and bring their weapons in for testing.
25 auto caliber firearms were submitted to the crime lab for test firing and microscopic comparison to the bullets taken from the murder victims. All of the firearms that were submitted were test fired into a water recovery system, which allows for the collection of nearly pristine or pristine bullets and the collection of the test-fired cartridge cases. The bullets were recovered, and those test fires were microscopically compared to the bullets from the murder victims.
But no matches are made, and the frustration wears hard on the team.
My biggest challenge in these cases was to have a positive attitude that hopefully this time we're going to find something that's going to shut down this activity. And over again, that didn't happen, so it's frustrating.
You can't sleep at night. You go to bed at 10 o'clock, you wake up at 2, you turn the coffee pot on, you get the books out, and you start reading about the case. You can't put it away.
Just when they're at their lowest, the killer throws another sucker punch. The 14th victim is Linda Mabin, but this time is different.
The body had been dumped into a ditch and then buried in the botanical debris. There was quite a lot of it in forensic standards still on the site, enough to tell that it did not match the local vegetation.
After thoroughly examining the debris, forensic botanist Richard Old makes an expert determination.
The evidence that was dumped with the bodies was all horticultural in nature. The site where it was dropped was primarily exotic weeds and a few native plants.
The debris provides another clue.
There was no pine needles associated with it, and this is largely a pine needle area.
Instead, Old recognizes traces of Japanese maple, oak, and dark bark chips.
This was typical of horticultural material that would have fallen in the fall. It was deciduous vegetation.
It's the kind of vegetation found in backyards.
There's a lot of illegal dumping that goes on in that area typically, from people getting rid of lawn clippings and cleaning up their yards, that sort of thing. But no one would just put lawn debris on top of bodies unless you were the killer.
A killer who likes to keep his yard trim and tidy. Based on the materials he found at the crime scene, Richard Old sets about creating a picture of the killer's yard. If he can find that yard, he can find the killer.
That yard that material came from was out there someplace. It was like a puzzle, and I wanted to solve it.
Old knows that the debris came from a landscaped garden. Based on species type and natural proximity from tree to tree, he begins to assemble a unique botanical fingerprint of the killer's lair.
What I imagined the yard to look like was 2 bark beds within 50 feet of each other based on the amount of cross-contamination, and I knew the species composition of each of those bark beds. To know the vegetation as well as knowing that there are 2 separate bark beds made this a very unique location that this material had come from. Normally, botanical evidence is used after a perpetrator has been identified. In this case, we had an opportunity to use the evidence to actually identify the perpetrator.
But legally, they can't just walk into any yard to check the flower beds. Instead, they develop an invaluable investigative tool.
The detectives in the case put together a book of the species that I found in the debris and used this when they were visiting suspects' homes to see if that plant composition occurred on those sites.
This is obviously not the yard.
In his lab, Dr. Lindholm continues to pore over the bodies, searching for any trace evidence the killer may have left behind.
We do take samples of the pubic hair off. We comb it, and we also do pulled samples. Now, on the comb and the brushings, that you're looking for somebody else's pubic hair is what you're looking for.
Months of examination pays off. Lindholm manages to recover foreign hair follicles from each of the victims.
I analyzed the hairs and compared them and determined that these pubic hairs did not match the victims.
Suggesting one thing: the pubic hairs belonged to the killer. A DNA match to the semen sample recovered from Jenifer Joseph's body confirms their suspicions.
When I analyzed the pubic hairs, I found them to be light brown and likely from a Caucasian person.
Armed with new information about their killer, investigators return to the track, this time with a new tactic. Undercover officers pose as prostitutes. Every John is a potential suspect.
We had instructed the certain officers who worked that downtown corridor to look for evidence that was pertinent to our investigation, such as grocery and merchandise bags, small caliber weapon, and specifically in any vehicle that might be capable of carrying or conveying a body and a large amount of debris in it.
Hey, where you going?
Even if there's nothing suspicious in the car, a John is still fair game for closer inspection.
Yeah, check this guy out, okay?
If a potential customer contacted them and agreed to a sex act for money that was constituted the crime of soliciting for prostitution, then they would be arrested. We would get their identification. We would get fingerprints and palm prints when they were booked that could be compared to information we already had.
Trying to stay one step ahead of the killer, the task force adopts a radical approach in dealing with missing persons.
We learned real quickly in this investigation to treat all missing persons, particularly females, as if they were homicide victims.
Melody's missing. Remember the last time you saw her?
Police fear the worst when a woman reports that her roommate, Melody Murfin, has gone missing. The local prostitute was last seen leaving her house with a repeat customer, someone she knew well, someone she trusted.
It's not unusual to have repeat customers. I feel safe, he feels safe, we know each other, we know we're not I'm not out to get him, he's not out to get me. I'm not a cop, he's not a cop.
You ready to go?
The roommate describes the caller as white, middle-aged with brown hair. He fits their serial killer description to a T.
There's a killer out there.
Don't worry. I'll take care of her.
Melody Murfin's disappeared near Mother's Day. Although we had no body with Melody, it was felt that she had been killed because she wasn't around anymore.
Investigators search the city streets and Spokane countryside, but they find no trace of Melody Murfin.
Can I get your name?
3 weeks later, the case takes a dramatic turn when police question local prostitute Christine Smith.
I got hit with something. You good, man? A black van pulled up, and I got into the van, and I had, since there was a serial killer running around, I was trying to always put up my feelers out to get an intuition on whether or not the person was, okay or not.
Yeah, I'm good.
I asked the customer if he was the serial killer. You sure you're good? And he said that he was a helicopter pilot with the Army National Guard. He was a father of 5. Now, does that sound like a serial killer to you? We proceeded to drive down the street, and I told him that I wanted to go to my spot. He gave me $40 for oral sex. And nothing was really happening. He said, okay, like he was talking to somebody else. I thought that I had been hit in my head really hard by maybe a wrench or a crowbar. I jumped out of the passenger seat, ran down the street screaming to the top of my lungs. My youngest daughter's life is what flashed before me. And that's what kept me from passing out. Hello? Hello? And I went into the elevator and I started pushing buttons so that the elevator would keep the door closed, hoping not to see, a hand come in to open the elevator door. And an arm did come through the elevator at one point, and I thought it was, the person that had just hit me, and it turned out to be the security guard.
After almost 9 years and 13 murders, can someone finally put a face to the notorious Spokane serial killer? After 9 years of hunting the infamous Spokane serial killer, police have a potential eyewitness. Prostitute Christine Smith has survived an attack with an aggressive John.
Because it was a violent crime, the hospital said that I had to make a police report.
Do you have any idea where you were when this happened?
I don't remember.
Smith describes the attack and reports that she was struck in the head with a heavy, blunt object.
No, I don't remember anything.
Christine Smith's case didn't fit the profile that we had of our victims at that time.
The most glaring discrepancy was the fact that she indicated that she had been hit with something, struck with a club or something different.
All of our victims had been shot in the head. We knew of none of them that had been physically assaulted.
Back to square one. The elusive nature of the killer continues to baffle police. Who is he, and where is he hiding?
We had over 7,000 tips, which ultimately led to about 80,000 pages of investigative material to clear those 7,000 tips. It's a needle in a haystack.
To cross-reference and filter the mountain of leads, forensic technicians turn to a new program called Tipman. From 7,000 tips, tip man narrows the field to just 44 suspects.
Most of these suspects, when they were approached, if they were truly innocent, they were rolling up their sleeves and offering up their blood sample. And if they weren't guilty, bingo, they walked.
Closing in on a possible suspect, police turn their attention to finding the white Corvette.
The Corvette might disappear. I might find it in the woods burned up after it had been reported stolen, or any number of things which would destroy evidence in it.
One by one, investigators approach the 44 Corvette owners on their list of suspects and search their vehicles.
I took a number of samples from the interior carpeting of the Corvette in different areas.
Here it is, guys. Have a look if you want.
Nearing the end of the list, their search pays off. The red carpet fibers strike an immediate chord with investigators.
Those fibers were microscopically almost identical to the fibers that were recovered from Jenifer Joseph's shoes and a towel that are with her body.
But there's a snag. The car owner only recently purchased the Corvette.
I got all the paperwork in the house. We can go get it if you want.
Yes, please.
Now police have to track down the previous car owner and bring him in for questioning. The Corvette is immediately impounded.
As part of our analysis, we pretty much took the Corvette apart piece by piece on the interior of the vehicle.
The vehicle was spotless. It was actually a real collector's car. I would have loved to have owned a car like that.
The team quickly discovers a small white button encased in the passenger floorboard.
I recognized that button immediately as a button that I had seen before.
I compared it against the buttons that were still on the Jenifer Joseph jacket.
It was an identical match to the one that was underneath this car seat.
Despite the fact that the car had been professionally detailed, the forensic team makes out a faint stain on the passenger seatbelt. Immediate DNA testing proves the blood belongs to Jenifer Joseph. The evidence in the vehicle confirms what investigators had earlier suspected. The killer viciously murdered Jenifer Joseph, then drove her lifeless body to the outskirts of Spokane, dumping her in the countryside. Now police need a name in connection to the car. Who was the previous owner of the white Corvette? Police quickly learn that the car was last registered to a helicopter pilot, a doting husband, and a father of 5. The man's name, Robert Yates. Police move in to make an arrest.
We picked an isolated section of highway in case the worst case scenario happened. We weren't going to jeopardize those people in the community.
Copy that. We're taking him down.
Possibly armed. Police leave nothing to chance.
Robert Yates! Want to see both hands out the window now? Out of the car! On the ground now!
When Yates fully complies with police, it begs one question. In their desperate attempt to catch the Spokane serial killer, have investigators captured the wrong man? After a decade of slaughter, Spokane police arrest 47-year-old Robert Lee Yates and charge him with murder. Investigators are convinced they have finally found their killer. Now they need the evidence to prove it. All units are dispatched to the Yates family home.
What I wanted to do is find the weapons in the house first and foremost.
Sorry to have to do this, but we have a warrant to search the premises.
Can you believe it? This guy's a war hero.
He's a helicopter pilot, Mr. Average, Spokane. He had 5 children and a wife. He'd been married. He'd been in the Army. He'd been in the Army National Guard.
It's unbelievable.
A search of the house turns up nothing.
Let's take a look in the yard.
Hoping that Yates may have buried his guns in the garden, investigators move outdoors. But again, the search comes up cold. Forensic botanist Richard Old is initially puzzled by the elaborate landscaping in the backyard.
It didn't work. It wasn't the way I had pictured it in my head.
But a closer examination of the individual plant species draws Old back to his original sketch.
That's what I was saying. It's the stuff that we found in the field, right?
He determines that most of the plants used to cover Linda Maben's body are present in Yates's backyard. But there is one glaring difference: the new red bark.
He covered the black bark with red chips.
When I saw that old bark that I'd spent so many hours digging through, the hair on the back of my neck just stood on end.
Old's theory pays off in spades and fuels a search for more evidence. When police discover a black van on the property, they strip it for clues and turn up a bullet fragment. But is it enough to guarantee a conviction? Investigators are then approached by former prostitute Christine Smith. She tells them about the recent visit she made to her doctor.
He comes back into the room and he says, well, Miss Smith, you have the beginning of osteoarthritis in your neck, but can you tell me what year you were shot?
X-rays reveal bullet fragments lodged in the bone at the base of Christine's skull. Her attacker didn't hit her with a crowbar, as she had earlier believed. He shot her point blank in the head.
I was shot right here, and it being that close to my ear, all you hear is an immense ringing.
It's a miracle that Christine Smith survived the attack. The fragments are removed from her skull and sent to the ballistics lab for comparison.
I was able to say that they were consistent in design with the bullet that had been recovered from a van where Christine Smith had been.
DNA testing will make or break the case. If investigators can prove that the semen samples recovered from the earlier victims belong to Yates, they have their killer. The DNA results are unmistakable. Robert Lee Yates is the Spokane serial killer, responsible for murdering 14 women in Spokane County.
I gotta tell you that I started to cry. I sat at my desk and I cried. I was so happy that we had finally done what we'd set out to do.
The state's agreement.
But investigators aren't done with Yates. The prosecution makes a deal. They'll waive the death penalty in exchange for information. They suspect Yates is responsible for the disappearance of Melody Murfin, the prostitute reported missing 2 years earlier.
He drew on a little map that he gave to his defense attorneys, and we followed his defense attorneys.
From a helicopter thousands of feet in the air, our own Dave Midgley points to a house in South Spokane.
The map leads them right back to the Yates family home.
Got something here.
We encountered a badly decomposed body that had obviously been buried for some time. That body that had been buried at Mr. Yates' home for the better part of 2 years was that of Melody Murfin.
In a Spokane courtroom, Robert Lee Yates receives a life sentence. In a separate trial in Pierce County, there's no obligation to honor Yates's plea bargain.
The jury ultimately decided he should be put on death row, where he still is today.
I can tell you that every one of those women were loved dearly by somebody at some point in their lives.
A memorial service is held for all the victims. Closure for their families.
Because the victims, even though they were prostitutes, they were still mothers and daughters and aunts and nieces and, grandkids of people.